Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we take a huge stack of sources, articles, research papers, viewer notes, and, well, we pull out the essential knowledge you need to instantly upgrade your understanding of a topic.
Yeah, and today we're focusing on something that, almost everyone does. We're talking about film and television.
Exactly. And let's be real, you're already watching shows and movies. We all are. But there's a big difference, right? A huge difference between just following the plot and actually being able to talk about why something worked.
Or why it didn't. Moving beyond just, oh, it was good, or I didn't like it.
Right. If you want to sound informed, fluent, you need the right language, the right structure.
And our sources today laid out this incredible roadmap. They detail all the high-utility language, some really sophisticated critical phrases, and maybe most importantly, they flag the most common. The grammatical landmines that trip people up.
Even people with a pretty big vocabulary.
Oh, especially them sometimes.
So our mission today is pretty straightforward. We're going to distill the tools, the vocabulary, and the mindset you need so that next time you finish a movie, you can confidently and, naturally chat about it in English.
And this isn't just about sounding smart. Media consumption, like watching Netflix, it's your biggest and most accessible classroom. You're hearing real dialogue, natural speed, idioms, humor. We're just building the bridge between the English you're hearing and the English you're speaking.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Let's start at the very beginning, the foundation. If you get the grammar wrong right at the start, the whole conversation just feels a little off.
It does. It sets the wrong tone. So you've just finished a film. How do you kick off that conversation?
Yeah, what's the opening line?
The sources are crystal clear on this. Keep it simple. You start with the title and a general opinion, something like, I watched Inception last night. It was amazing.
Simple structure, past action, fixed time, immediate reaction.
That's your gold standard.
It sounds almost deceptively simple. But the key thing there, the part that so many learners get wrong, is the verb tense. That difference between I watch and I watched.
This is the big aha moment. It
Yeah.
really is. When you're talking about something you finished watching at a specific time in the past, you most use the simple past tense. I watched, I saw, I enjoyed.
Let's really dig into the why of that. We see the mistake all the time. I watched Inception yesterday. The words are right, but the sentence immediately signals something's not quite fluent. Why?
It's a direct conflict. It's like a contradiction in the sentence itself. The sources highlight that when you use a specific past time expression words like yesterday, last night, last week, 2 days ago, those are like signposts.
Chronological signposts. I like that.
Yeah, they tell the listener that the action is 100% finished. It's done. It's locked in the past.
So saying I watch implies a habit, right? Like I watch TV every night. But then you immediately contradict it with yesterday, which is a single finished point in time. The timeline just sort of collapses.
It completely collapses. When you anchor the action to that specific past time, the verb has to reflect it. I watched Inception yesterday. The action and the time slot are in perfect agreement. That linkage is absolutely key to sounding natural.
Okay, so let's take this a step further because this is where it can get tricky for an intermediate learner. What happens if you take that specific time marker away? This gets into the whole simple past versus present perfect thing.
An excellent point, and so important for anyone aiming for mastery. We just established that simple past needs that timestamp. I watched it on Tuesday. The present perfect, that's the I have watched or I have seen structure, is for when the time isn't specified or when the action is generally relevant to right now.
So if someone asks me a general question, like at a party, hey, have you seen Dune? My natural response wouldn't be, yes, I watched Dune. What would it be?
The fluent response is, yes, I have seen it, or maybe, yeah, I've watched that. The question isn't when you did it. It's whether that experience is part of your life now.
So the focus is on the result. The result being, I now have knowledge of the film Dune.
Precisely. Simple past is for reporting the details of the finished event. Present perfect is for reporting the existence of the event in your life.
That's a really powerful distinction. So if I say, I have seen Dune, the conversation might continue and they might ask, oh, really? When did you see it?
And your answer would then be, I saw it last month. You switch instantly back to the simple past.
Because I just introduced a specific time anchor, last month.
The moment you say last month, present perfect is out the window, simple past becomes mandatory. Getting that switch down, making it automatic, that's what really separates intermediate from advanced speakers.
Okay, so once we've nailed the grammar, we can move into the heart of the conversation, which is, sharing our actual opinion. And we need to get beyond good or bad. We need descriptive power.
Exactly. We need precise vocabulary. Our sources gave a great foundational set, but to really sound like an expert, we need to expand on them, find synonyms that add nuance.
Let's start with a basic one and then level it up. The word exciting.
Exciting is great. It's powerful. It creates energy. You think of action movies. But if you want to elevate that, you could use words like gripping or compelling.
What's the difference there?
Well, gripping suggests the story literally held you tight and wouldn't let you go. It's often about suspense. Compelling means it was so interesting it just demanded your attention. The characters or the ideas were compelling.
Much richer. Okay, now the opposite of that, boring.
If a film is boring, it just fails to hold your interest. But to sound a bit more like a critic, you might say it was tedious or monotonous.
Tedious. That implies it felt long, right?
Exactly. Long and maybe a bit repetitive. Whereas monotonous really focuses on the lack of variety, the same thing happening over and over again, which makes it dull.
Okay, next up, the feeling of fear. Scary.
A straightforward word, perfect for horror movies. But the more advanced alternatives focus on the type of fear it creates. Instead of just scary, you could try chilling.
Chilling suggests something psychological.
Yes, a deep fear that kind of stays with you after the movie's over. Or you could say terrifying, which is much more extreme, an immediate, intense fear response.
And for comedies, we have funny.
Essential. But again, you can be more specific. If it was extremely funny, you'd say it was hilarious. If the humor was more about clever dialogue and wordplay, you'd say it was witty.
That's a great distinction. Witty is about the script.
Right. And finally, let's nail down dramatic. This one causes a lot of confusion. People sometimes just use it to mean loud or intense.
But that's not quite it, is it?
Not in film critique. Dramatic means the story is focused on deep conflict, high emotional stakes, complex characters making big decisions. It's about a serious exploration of the human condition.
So if an actor is just shouting all their lines, that isn't necessarily dramatic?
Not at all. In fact, that's a common misinterpretation. If the emotion feels exaggerated, over the top, maybe even poorly written, it crosses the line into being melodramatic.
Ah, so using the word melodramatic is actually a criticism.
A very specific one. It suggests the film is trying too hard to manipulate your emotions, whereas good drama explores genuine conflict. Making that distinction is a key sign of thoughtful analysis.
Okay, this is fantastic. So no matter which adjective we pick, gripping, tedious, witty, the sources point to two great ways to structure the sentence.
Right. Structure one is the direct assessment. The movie was really witty, simple, clear. It gives the quality directly to the movie.
But then there's structure two, the more personalized one. I found it exciting.
And this one is a real fluency marker. When you say, I found it exciting, you're subtly shifting the focus. It's not an objective fact that the movie is exciting for everyone.
It's your subjective experience. It made me feel excited.
That's it exactly. It sounds so much more natural because it's how we actually talk about our internal states. You're reporting the result of your analysis. It's more advanced because it implies this personal, conscious evaluation.
And what if you want to show you recognize an emotion in the film, but maybe you didn't feel it yourself?
That's a great point. You could use a third structure with verbs like felt or seemed. For instance, the movie felt very intense, or the plot seemed a bit monotonous.
So that adds a layer of distance.
A little bit of critical distance. I found it monotonous is you owning that feeling. Seen monotonous is you offering a more cautious observation. Both are excellent ways to elevate your critique.
All right, so moving from a single film to the whole world of television series, that requires a whole new set of words, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. If you can't talk about the structure of a TV show, your conversation is just going to be vague. You can't get into the details.
So our sources start with the absolute non-negotiables, the basic building blocks of TV talk, season and episode.
You have to know these. A season is the big story, that large group of episodes. An episode is just that single individual part.
So you'd never say, I'm watching the third part of The Crown. You have to say, I'm watching the third season of The Crown and I just finished the 5th episode.
Exactly. And now, with how complex TV storytelling has become, we need even more terms. We need to talk about the pilot and the finale.
The pilot being the very first episode, the one that's supposed to hook you.
And the finale is the last one, either for the season or for the entire show. And that distinction is really important.
Because the season finale usually ends on a clat.
A cliffhanger.
Right, the cliffhanger. That term is so useful.
It's that sudden ending, right at a moment of huge tension, that just leaves you desperate to know what happens next. It's why you immediately start the next season of something like Game of Thrones.
It's a storytelling tool. And we also need words for when a show comes back in a new form. Our sources mentioned reboots and spin-offs.
A reboot is when they just start the whole thing over. New actors, new timeline, ignoring everything that came before, like all the different Batman movies.
And a spin-off.
That's when a character from an existing show gets their own show. It's still in the same universe, it's just a different focus.
Using these words just makes your critique so much clearer. You're not just talking about the show, you're talking about the quality of the reboot or the success of the spin-off.
And this all leads directly into how we watch these shows now, which brings us to that crucial informal verb, to binge watch.
A term that probably didn't even exist 20 years ago. The sources define it perfectly, watching many episodes in a short, intense period.
And it's not really slang anymore, is it? It's a standard term. It implies a level of speed and commitment that watching just doesn't capture. The anecdote in our sources about watching 5 episodes of Friends and losing sleep,
Yeah.
that's the perfect illustration.
Yeah, when you tell someone, I binged the whole season this weekend, they know exactly what you mean. The volume, the urgency, it's all in that one word.
And it's all enabled by the streaming service, which is another key term. We don't just watch things on TV, we watch them on Netflix, on Hulu. Mentioning the service is now part of the conversation.
Okay, let's connect this back to learning. Shows like Friends are always highlighted as being great for language acquisition. Why is that?
It's because the dialogue is so natural and conversational, and because it's a comedy, the lines are designed to be memorable.
That memorability is everything. When you hear an iconic line like Ross from Friends shouting, "We were on a break," you're not just learning words.
No, you're learning cultural shorthand. It's gold. When you're talking with native speakers, being able to drop in a quote like that or reference a famous scene, it's a powerful signal.
It signals that you're part of the shared culture. You get the joke, the context, the inflection.
It's the difference between knowing the definition of a word and knowing how to use that word to connect with someone. Every time you catch one of those lines and repeat it, you're internalizing the rhythm of native speech. It's a huge boost for your social fluency.
Okay, so we have the grammar, we have the vocabulary. Now we're moving into the realm of true critical sophistication. These are the specific idiomatic phrases that just make your commentary sound so much more precise and engaging.
These are the phrases that show you're offering real analysis, not just summarizing the plot. Let's start with the most basic measure of engagement. I couldn't stop watching.
It's simple, but it's powerful.
It is. It's active. It implies the show had this hook that was so strong, nothing else mattered. Sleep, food. Irrelevant. It's the purest way to express that you were totally engaged.
All right, next up, the phrase for suspense. It kept me on the edge of my seat.
I love this one. It's a metaphor, but it describes a real physical feeling. That feeling of leaning forward, tense, waiting to see what happens next. You use this specifically for thrillers or action movies where the suspense is really well done.
Okay, now moving into critiquing the story itself. A specific flaw. The plot was predictable.
This is a really smart criticism because you're targeting the writing, the actual structure of the story. It means you figured out the twist or the ending way too early.
The writer failed to surprise you.
Exactly. And allows you to separate the elements. You might say the plot was predictable, but, which leads us to our next phrase.
Which is, the acting was amazing.
This lets you give specific, granular praise. You can isolate the quality of the performances from any problems you had with the script or the direction. It's essential for a balanced critique.
And finally, maybe the most important one for polite conversation. It wasn't my cup of tea.
Ah, yes. The great social grace phrase. It's the polite, natural way to say, I didn't like it, without sounding blunt or aggressive.
Because when you say it wasn't your cup of tea, you're not saying the movie was objectively bad.
Precisely.
Yeah.
You're saying it just didn't match your personal taste. And that's a key part of social fluency. It shows respect for the other person's opinion. It avoids turning a simple chat into an argument.
That's so crucial. Okay, let's expand this a bit. The sources also recommend some other concepts for sounding like a real expert. Let's talk about pacing.
Yes, pacing is huge.
Yeah.
How do you talk about the speed of a film without just saying it was too slow?
Right. What's a better way?
You could say the pacing was uneven. That's a great critique. It suggests that maybe the middle of the film dragged, but the ending felt super rushed. It disrupts the flow.
And what if it was slow, but in a good artistic way?
Then you'd call it a slow burn. A slow burn implies that the slowness is deliberate. It's building atmosphere and tension towards a big payoff at the end. It suggests patience is required, not that the film is boring.
That's a very sophisticated defense of a slow film. Okay, what about the words the actors are actually saying? How do we critique the dialogue?
If the dialogue just sounds wrong or artificial, you can say the dialogue felt wooden.
Wooden, like a puppet talking.
Exactly. Stiff, unnatural. Or you could say the dialogue fell flat. This is especially good for jokes or big emotional lines that were supposed to have an impact but just didn't.
And on the flip side, if the dialogue was fantastic,
You could say the script was incredibly sharp. Or if you're talking about the actors' interactions, the chemistry between the leads was electric.
chemistry, that's another great word. It's that spark between the actors.
Mhm. And calling it electric is high praise for how believable and intense their connection felt on screen. These are the kinds of specific image-rich phrases that really make your critique stand out.
So the big lesson is to use metaphorical language. Wooden, electric, on the edge of your seat. You're painting a picture of your experience.
We've given you the tools for advanced critique. Now we have to go back and reinforce the structure, focusing on those common grammar mistakes that our sources flag as, immediate fluency killers.
Right. Getting rid of these errors will just instantly make your English sound so much better. Let's start with mistake number 1, adding ing where it just doesn't belong, like saying the movie's very funny.
Right. The simple fix is just don't do it. But the reason why is that words like funny or scary are base adjectives. They describe a quality. You wouldn't say the car is very redding. You just say the car is red. Same principle.
The confusion comes in, though, because of words like exciting or boring, which do end in ing.
Correct. And that leads us right into a related and extremely common mistake. Let's call it mistake 1B.
Confusing the cause and the effect.
Exactly. The error is saying something like, I was excited by the film.
If you say, I was exciting, you're saying you are the person who causes excitement.
You're the exciting agent, yes. But what you mean to say is, I was excited by the film. You use the ed form to describe the feeling, the state that you are in as a result of the movie.
So the movie is the exciting thing, the cause, and I am the excited person, the effect.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And that rule applies across the board. The lecture was boring, cause, so I was bored, effect. The instructions were confusing, cause, so I was confused, effect. Getting that distinction right is a massive step forward.
Okay, on to mistake number 2, the classic battle, good versus well.
An age-old struggle. The error is using the adjective good to describe an action. For instance, I watched the movie Good.
And why is that wrong?
Because good is an adjective. It describes a thing, a noun. It was a good movie. An action, a verb like watched, has to be described by an adverb. And the adverb for good is well.
So technically the correct sentence is, I watched the movie well.
Technically, yes. But, and this is a big but, it sounds really weird. It sounds unnatural and awkward, almost like you're saying you're a professional movie watcher.
Nobody says that.
Nobody says that. This is where the strict grammar rule bumps up against natural, fluent conversation.
So we offer the deep dive safety net, the conversational bypass.
Exactly. The safest, most natural, and most fluent solution is to just avoid the whole problem and say, I really enjoyed the movie.
Why is enjoyed the safe word here?
Because you're describing your state of being, your feeling of satisfaction, and you can easily and correctly modify that with an adverb like really, greatly, thoroughly, I really enjoyed it. Is structurally perfect, sounds completely natural, and gets the positive point across perfectly.
It's the ultimate pro tip. If you're ever in doubt about good or well after watching something, just go with, I enjoyed it.
Always. And let's quickly hit mistake number 3, which is more of a style issue. Over-relying on the word very.
Oh, this is a big one. If you want to sound sophisticated, the film was very, very, very good. It's just not going to cut it.
No, very is a weak word. The best adjectives already have very built into them. Instead of the film was very scary, use terrifying. Instead of the film was very funny, use hilarious.
So the goal is to learn words that replace that very plus adjective combination. It makes your sentences tighter and more powerful.
That is a hallmark of native level fluency, swapping weak intensifiers for strong, descriptive adjectives.
Okay, let's put it all together. A quick summary checklist. Your mental prep for the next movie night chat.
Right. Checklist item 1, tense mastery. Simple past, I watched, with a time marker. Present perfect, I have seen, for general experience.
Checklist item 2, descriptive power. Go beyond good. Use strong adjectives like gripping, witty, and remember that personal touch. I found it compelling.
Checklist item 3, TV vocabulary.
Yeah.
You need the basics. Season, episode, pilot, finale, cliffhanger. And talk about how you watch with binge watch and the name of the streaming service.
Checklist item 4. Elevate your expressions. Use those specific phrases. For suspense, kept me on the edge of my seat. For politeness, it wasn't my cup of tea.
And checklist item 5. Avoid the pitfalls. Remember the ing versus a id rule for feelings, and when in doubt, use that safety net. I really enjoyed it.
That is a seriously functional, comprehensive toolkit. You now have everything you need to go from being a passive viewer to a really informed, active participant in any conversation about media.
And confidence comes from action. The best thing you can do is practice this immediately. After you watch something tonight, don't wait. Try to describe it even if it's just to yourself.
Yeah, just 3 strong sentences using some of this vocabulary. That's a huge win.
Don't worry about it being a perfect report. Fluency is about communication, not perfection. Just use these phrases, get comfortable with them.
And that brings us to our final thought, something for you to take away from this deep dive.
We often think of learning English and watching TV as two totally separate things, but they're not. The highest quality, most current, most conversational English you can find is already on your screen. It's in the dialogue, the jokes, the arguments in your favorite shows.
So the learning doesn't end when the credits roll. That's actually when it begins. By trying to apply these rules in this vocabulary, you turn your entertainment into the most effective, most enjoyable study session you could possibly have.
Turn off the TV and immediately try to describe what you just saw. Say it out loud. Record it on your phone. That one active step is the fastest way to build that bridge to real fluency.
Until next time, keep watching, keep learning, and keep diving deep into the conversation.